So we're here for the Defend Quality Brainstorming. Who's gonna, Lindsay, you do such a great job doing agendas. Would you mind doing it?
And by doing agendas, you mean taking notes?
No, I mean going through the.
Sure. Yeah, so we've got this agenda. I know, Mech, you met with Wayne about some of this previously. He wasn't able to make it today. So I think the goal of this meeting is to identify areas where we are accepting greater risk within Defend, and we could use assistance from our SDET counterparts to fill some of those gaps. Like I just said before you called, Mech, I think one of the areas that we'd identify early on, and Tanya had worked with Thomas Woodham on this, was around load testing WAF, to provide an example. But I think the goal of this meeting is to identify other areas that are similar to that. So looking at this agenda, it looks like this has been broken down into sort of general Defend areas, and then each of our groups. So the groups within Defend right now are container security and threat insights. So do you want to just go through these areas and add to our list of where we've identified risks and how we can try to mitigate those?
Sure. Before we jump in, I want to take a step back. So so everybody is aware, the current team structure right now, we don't have anyone for Defend, and that is going to improve when we have the planned hiring opening up. We only have one person for secure, and maybe we can prioritize this, and when the secure test gap integration tests, we can maybe switch and work only on the highest priority items for this. And that's how things are going to be. I'm trying to set expectations here. That's going to be how things will be until we get more help on our side. And to be completely honest and transparent, we did planned staffing for both secure and Defend early on last year. However, when the product roadmap was revised, the headcount for those positions, I think we have 3 people, it was removed, and now we only have 1. So I think that's something that when the opportunity opens up, we need a counterpart here. I would love to have support from you to help add the case for this, because the teams are stretched thin. The dev side of things, we're working on Gitli, a big prospect there. It's waiting for it. CI is busy as well. Enablement has a bunch of self-managed customers that we need to land with a 50K reference architecture. So everyone is busy, but we will try to make it work, and we prioritize aggressively to get things done iteratively. So just want to put that forward out first, so all of you understand where the team is at.
Thanks, Mech. I wanted to speak to the logic in having someone shared across Secure and Defend, that I think there's a lot of value there, and that we do have a good amount of overlap. I mean, if someone has got a lot of expertise or knowledge around the scanners that Secure team supports, it's a logical leap to be assisting with things like the security dashboards. I don't know, that's not necessarily the case with container security, but I think there's a lot of logical overlaps between the 2 stages.
Got it. Is Defend like the next step of secure, similar to how we have release in CI?
I think I should let Philippe answer that question.
What do you mean by next step? In terms of what?
Let me take a step back. Like, for you to test Defend, do you need to know the pillars from secure, or they're totally different things?
Totally different things.
Okay, got it. Then I think a shared resource can be beneficial, but if I hear this, I'd rather make a strong case to have someone dedicated to Defend, and they can build knowledge going on, and they can be in subject matter expertise in that. But yeah, thanks for that remark.
The only thing that would be close enough for that would be the vulnerability management. So what we call the standalone vulnerabilities, because it's tied with secure in a way that the results from secure are going to be digested and presented by vulnerability management, but that's pretty much it.
Okay.
But we can completely mark that data, obviously.
Okay. Before we go ahead, can we please put like a rough priority on the list here? On the is it both container security we're looking at and threat insights? Is that where we stand here? on like what are the if I were to get a list from all of you on what is the highest item to work on, highest priority item, how would you stack rank it for me and the team?
So yeah, within Defend, we have two groups: container security and threat insights are the two groups that we have. I haven't talked with Matt ahead of this time, but I would actually argue that my group, the container security group, is definitely the highest priority. I'll just go ahead and vocalize what I've got there. So container security is different from all other things in all of GitLab because container security is really focused around protecting the customer's code while it's running in a production environment. So secure is scanning things before it goes out to production. Everything else is pre-production. This is the one thing that's post-production in all of GitLab. And so with the web application firewall, for example, we're actually sitting in line in front of the customers running applications and the outside world. And so if we have a bug there, it's not just GitLab that we're breaking anymore. You know, it's not, oops, GitLab broke, don't worry, we'll fix it real quick. This is the customer's production environment that we just crashed, that we're at fault for. And that's a very big deal. You know, that's not, when those kinds of bugs arise, it's not easily forgotten or forgiven. And it's, I would say that that is a huge risk that we're taking on as GitLab in our lack of testing of those environments today. So I would put that definitely as top priority. I would put it above threat insights. I would really put it above most of the other testing that's happening in GitLab, just because we're actually crossing that boundary in the customer's production environments rather than the GitLab product itself.
Okay, this is container security, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Could just add one here.
Yeah, Sam, I don't disagree.
Philippe does.
I have an opinion, but obviously it's biased. I would put vulnerability management at the top of the list because it's that's definitely critical to me. And by the way, the categories that we have here are not real categories in the sense of the handbook. So we might want to
they're groups.
Precise that. Yeah, there are groups. So let's talk about the right thing here.
I thought we were talking about groups. What do you mean by that, Philippe?
I see in the doc major feature categories here, and we have standard vulnerabilities, web application. So we are mixing categories and groups in there. So that's confusing to me. So are we prioritizing groups or categories? I'm lost.
I think right now we're talking about at the group level.
He's just talking about in this document, it calls out major feature categories and it lists the categories under there. And then below that, it jumps back to groups. So how do we want to bucket this?
That's why I'm putting that out.
Cool. So sorry I was late. We have 15 minutes left. So we identified the top one to work on. Now, if I were to restructure this, right, the work that we need from a test infrastructure standpoint, I want to solve it from my end where if there's anything that Will has already done that we can reuse, anything that the other teams have been doing. I see K Kubernetes cluster here that I'll dive further into that. We have some things that we can possibly reuse to set up a test infrastructure pipeline for this. For Kubernetes cluster, the release counterpart to development, Dan Davidson, he is now pioneering, I think, of K3S, which is like a Docker container that has Kubernetes mechanisms built in. And we now have transitioned away from testing against a real GCP cluster because K3S speeds up the deployment, and you can test the auto DevOps part pretty fast. So we could look into that to speed up the things. I'm looking to identify what are the pillars that we can work on and piece together what we have done before to set up something fast and easy, while maybe have it before someone joins, or at least have a plan in place, and have work be in progress before we have a dedicated counterpart here. So with that, should we just touch on Tiago's third comment there? So there's an end-to-end specs, and there's a number of things highlighted there under A, B, and C.
Sure, I'll verbalize that quickly. This is three-part risk. One is around cost. So you started addressing that, perhaps as an alternative to deploying a full Kubernetes cluster. So that's good. We have a mitigation on there. On the second one, I don't fully understand how the end-to-end QA specs work yet, but apparently they don't run on merge requests, understandably, due to cost constraints. They do run on when it's merged to master. That creates a gap for a chance there where things are merged and then integration. So say the orchestration team, the example I'm giving actually happened is what's on C. The orchestration team changes one of the Helm charts that installs dependencies that Defend uses in Kubernetes, and then that no longer works for the Defend features. We wouldn't know that until that runs on master. And by that time, if it's on master, it's going to get released eventually. So we'll be racing against the clock.
Against time to fix it. So it's like
either roll it back or fix it.
Somebody puts a roadblock in front of you and you're like, crap.
That's it. Do I brake? Do I swerve?
Okay, so Helm charts, we are semi-testing it. Do you have an issue for that bug that we can probably root cause analysis?
I do. So it's popped up 3 times on my radar now. I have 2 issues to add some coverage to it. It's currently being prioritized. If there's someone who's already working on that in CQ, and did you mention, was it Will?
Will Meek.
Yeah, okay.
He's working on secure, let me get it right, secure offline integration testing right now.
Might ask him for some pointers. Not going to ask him to switch priorities or anything, but it'll still sit on our prioritization for Matt and Sam to look at. Well, mostly Sam. I think there's nothing for you, Matt. And yep. And on coverage, I'm flying a little bit blind there at the moment.
Sorry, I want to type this out before I vocalize. Okay. So QA spec automated running on MRs. Is this the main project, or is it a different secure project? Because I know Security Defend have a number of projects that you work on. Is it in the main parent repo? Let's call it that.
It is in the monolith, yeah, in the Rails app.
Okay. Okay. QA specs automatic MRs, they run on master. This is, you can run the QA specs manually. I think what we need to do here is identify the risk areas that will affect Defend. Do you have a theme on which team breaks the most your dependencies?
It would definitely be around Helm charts for container security. Sam, feel free to chime in. Because we just depend on the Helm charts working correctly so we can install dependencies. There might be some stuff around telemetry. I don't know if you know enough about that, Philippe, to comment. No, I would start with orchestration and telemetry second.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the other aspect is things like load tests and long running tests. At least for container security, we're talking about customers' production environments, and so the scale that we can test things through here is not the scale that they're experiencing in production. And that was where that critical bug came about with mod security, where we were introducing just a growing amount of latency. We didn't catch that in our own testing, but once customers, namely GitLab, deployed that to a production environment, it showed up, but we ended up crashing the production environment. And so, thinking about how do we avoid those types of things that are not super easy for developers to just write unit tests to solve for.
Okay, before I go to point D, thank you for bringing it up. Let's wrap up point B first. So what I'm hearing is that a lot of these things happen in the Helm charts. So it's not a broad set of groups. It's targeted to these dependencies that affect your productivity the most, which are, I think that the distribution team manages the Helm charts. What needs to happen is a better gate around when those changes, what can we do to make sure that they get a faster feedback loop from you? And it could be like some checks that run in their pipeline to say, hey, you change this, you're going to make a lot of people unhappy in the other side of the company because you're breaking their dependencies. So it's not like we have to have somebody test it every time, but if there's a pattern that we can identify and have some basic checks, some simple mocks that can just run in the distribution realm with where the Helm charts are being maintained, I think we can get this done fairly quickly.
You touched on a good one there, the patterns. I think that's a good path to go down. I've spoken, might have been with not Tanya, someone else in your team, about identifying file paths in the application that would be a dependency for defend, and the Helm charts certainly follow that. And then we can either try and trigger the end-to-end test automatically based on these paths, or have a bot flag someone to do a double check, something like that. I like it.
I'm thinking of like, it's really hard to test an end-to-end thing on distribution, because what we end up doing is in that pipeline, they actually reuse GitLab QA, and they come up with a set of version containers, and they just rerun GitLab QA on all of those flavors. So the coverage there is okay. It can be better, obviously, but we need to target how can we just detect it earlier on, and it might not even be a test, maybe some analysis like, hey, you're changing this file pattern, you're changing this path. It doesn't have to be an end-to-end, but like if you change something and it mismatches, the container, it was not going to work for this group, and then fix it before you merge it. That's probably the smallest iteration we can do to solve this. And then if we have this in, let's measure it. If we have it in, if it's working as intended, fast forward a few weeks or a release from now, we should be seeing less breakages of this. And then if we're still seeing it, it means that we probably need to close out, like add more analysis there to make sure that we catch it. So yeah, I think that's the plan for point B. Does that make sense?
Yep, happy with that.
Cool. C, I don't know what the coverage is, because we don't have a team.
That's two of us.
in defense, so we will have to talk about this next time around. Point D for scale, we have the same problem in all the other feature areas. What I'm trying to push for with infrastructure is to get a sanitized version of production data inside staging, and that will trigger a lot of the painful data shapes that you don't really see in a very clean environment. It's this really nasty data shapes that trigger delays and unoptimized queries on our end. I want to see how we can adapt this playbook and solve it for defend. So if anybody can let me know, what is the nature of the performance that we're seeing here? Is it the database? Is it code paths? Is it like what does it look like?
So again, talking about actually customers' runtime environments, this would be in the Kubernetes cluster, monitoring things like network latency coming in and out of the deployed Kubernetes cluster, as well as even just like CPU memory usage, uptime, making sure that if we run for a really long time and a really high volume, is there a memory leak somewhere that eventually causes us to crash? Those types of bugs would be things to watch out for.
I see. Okay. So it's not data. It sounds like we need like a common environment for load testing that you can just let it run on a longer cadence for
Correct.
this specific area of the product. Could be like a new environment set up by our team. this is painful for me to hear because we are starting to become the experts of setting up environments. We have like 7 reference architecture environments now. We don't have a performance environment for this group. So that is definitely something we can. I would treat that as like a service desk thing where I would just ask someone from another group to maybe set it up, and then if this group can start to use it and maintain it at a limited capacity until someone as a permanent counterpart from SCT can come, I think that'll be great. But this is probably a longer running task. I think 0.3, 3A and 3B is something we can aim to knock out sooner. So we solve the dependency and blockage there. Yeah, that's my analysis for point D. Happy to hear your thoughts from everyone else.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a reasonable approach.
And my thought is that we are on time. Do we want to see where we're going next with this?
Yeah, let's. Let me talk to the team on this. If you can link me the breakages in the Helm charts, that'll be great. Let's start with that. Feel free to just link in point B here.
I'll do
and
that.
then I'll run by the team, probably the engineering productivity team, because they know Helm charts like the back of their hand. Maybe you can add something there for the distribution team and add some checks and see if we get help and relief there. And then we can aim to maybe touch base again after having that iteration done. So maybe 3 weeks. Let's have a sync again, and then see where we are from there. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Just before we are all running away, just want to make sure that we're on the same page with what defend is. We talked a lot about M charts and Kubernetes and everything. This is half of defend, right? You're aware of that. The other half is vulnerability management, and we don't have any coverage for that, which is pure rage. So it should not be a problem, but just want to make sure that it's going to land somewhere in QA, because this is where the big bugs are. And I'm sorry, Sam, I understand you want to push your categories. That's perfectly fine, but just want to make sure that we also cover vulnerability management in this discussion.
We'll get to, let's prioritize. We have a limited amount of time and people. So yes, at the end goal, we want to cover everything, but like right now, let's prioritize and see what we can do with what the most impactful with what we have.
So what I'm hearing is we'll pick up vulnerability in 3 weeks. We'll talk about it then. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that the proposal?
Let's see where we are at with so what I'm hearing is that 3B here, and that's the most important thing to solve, to unblock when the dependency breaks for you. Correct? That's the first one to solve.
It's an important one. I didn't make the call whether it's the most important or not. I raised it, but I couldn't judge whether it's the. I think both are important, because one is where the cash cow is and it's what there's the most users. The other one has the highest impact to customers. I'm not in position to make that judgment.
And I would just to make the argument, if we don't our customers don't manage their vulnerabilities well, the impact of having a high severity vulnerability in production could be just as detrimental.
So who is the right person to take the decision? Wayne, David, Sam?
I mean, I suppose it would be David, right?
You're biased, Sam. What did you say? You said David?
PM, I think PM, yeah, I think PM owns priority. I think it would be David.
Yeah, all right. Fine with me. So let's reach out to David and figure it out. All right, thank you.
Cool. So we can talk async. Doesn't have to be the next 2 weeks to revise this. But right now, things that I can digest and give it to the team seems to be 3B, right? The Helm chart dependency breaking. Other things will need more infrastructure work. So let's keep the conversation channels open. I'll work on this, the first thing first, and then we can revisit maybe async. Let's talk in the quality channel, and then we can go from there and cross-link this document.
Sounds good. I'll stop the recording now. Have a good day, everyone.